Okay, our last speaker for this session is Jessica O'Brien. Jessica earned her bachelor's in plant biology from UC Davis, and for the past 20 years, she's worked as a botanist conducting rare plant surveys across Sierra Pacific Industries timberlands throughout northern and central California. She works out of our Camino office and will be sharing with us today the story of a new Lewisia from the southeastern Klamath Ranges, which is a long walk from Camino. Please welcome Jessica.
Hi, thank you for having me talk this afternoon. I'm excited to share with you this new Lewisia, so I'll jump right in. So the story began back in June of 2010. My coworker Stephanie Puentes and I were surveying in Trinity County at the northeast end of Trinity Lake. And we were out looking for plants such as Silene, Salmonaceae, and Erythronium, Citrinum rodriguei. We were focusing on open habitats, and we were driving from one unit to the next and saw some great habitat above a road cut bank and decided to hop out. And we found this little beauty along with Silene Salmonaceae. Both of us had been working in the trainees for about 6 years, and we hadn't seen this Lewisia before. So, being a little stumped, we pulled out our old trusty Jepson manual, which back then was the 1993 version, and the second edition and the e-flora were not out yet. So this was a key we had to work with. It had 2 sepals and 2 bracts. They looked like 4, but our margins of the sepals and bracts were predominantly entire. A few of them were toothed, and they were glandless. So you can see in the key that we're well arranged for brachycalyx, and it didn't quite go to Calagiae. So being stumped, we contacted the late Dr. Dean Taylor, who worked as a consultant for us, and we sent him pictures of this Lewisia we found. And we knew that Calagiae occurred in the Sierras, but we weren't aware of any out in the Trinity area. So Dean was very excited over this. He thought for sure this was a plant he had seen back in early 1970s on a CNPS field trip to Cook and Green Pass in Siskiyou County with Wayne Roderick. And so he immediately said, "Oh, you guys got to study this. This might be something new." So with that, Dean got us in touch with Barbara Wilson, who had looked at Lewisia Calagiae when she was studying the now Lewisia sacagawea. She had done an isozyme and morphometric study with looking at those 2. And then serendipitously, Matt Guilliams was working on a Lewisia clade while he was a PhD student at UC Berkeley. So all parties strongly suggested that we should collect some tissue samples and send those to the National Forest and Genetics Electrophoresis Laboratory, which I'll refer to as NIFGEL, in Placerville. So in 2011, we collected tissue samples, and serendipitously, the Six Rivers National Forest had also found some Lewisia on their forest up here, and they weren't sure if it was Lewisia Calagiae either. So John McRae and SPI partnered together, and we were able to send tissue samples to NIFGEL. And you can see in yellow are the samples we collected, and Barbara Wilson's samples are in green. And then we also sent genetic material to Matt as well. So the isozyme work was able to show that the Trinity Lewisia, as I'll refer to it, was different than Sacagawea in Idaho, but they couldn't quite tell if it was something different than Calagiae. Whereas Matt's initial ITS sequencing showed that this new Trinity Lewisia came out on a separate branch with strong support. So it was suggested and encouraged, Dean highly encouraged us to pursue a study of this. So we decided to look at do a morphological analysis across the range of Lewisia cloggii. So between 2012 and 2018, we collected from 22 locations, and we sampled 20 individuals at each location. We collected genetic material from those 20 individuals and stored them at NIFGEL in hopes that we might be able to do a genetic study in the future. And we also collected 33 different morphological measurements on each of those individuals. We also collected herbarium specimens and photos at each location. So here's a map of the locations we collected from. So you can see 6 rivers and the new trendy stuff up here. And then we tried to do across the range of Lewisia cloggii. Unfortunately, we didn't get from the most southern known occurrence at Shut-Eye Peak in the Sierra National Forest, but we got pretty close. And we tried to do an equal number of each subspecies of Lewisia cloggii. So when we were first looking at this Lewisia and using the key that we had, and even when the second edition of the Jepson manual came out, the eFlora, we noticed that our trendy Lewisia just never keyed out very well, even with the new Jepson key. And that was something as well with the Lewisia cloggii in the Sierras, that often the plants would fall within a gray area between the two subspecies. So it was a little confusing. But one of the things we noticed right off the bat with the new Trinity Lewisia was that their sepals and bracts were predominantly entire, occasionally toothed, and were always glandless. Whereas Lewisia cloggii has these beautiful pink glands and are almost always toothed. Another difference was the stamen numbers is quite a bit higher in the Trinity Lewisia versus Lewisia cloggii. And when looking at the morphometric data, that is something that pops out. And then also, there's a difference in the style length and anther length between the two. So Matt Guilliams was able to analyze our morphometric data recently, and he found 7 variations that look different by taxon. So we'll jump through his box plot data or graphs. So you'll see on the left is LEK unknown, so these will always be the Trinity Lewisias, and then the 2 subspecies of Lewisia cloggii. So looking at bract variables, you can see that the Trinity Lewisia, there's a big difference in the number of teeth. So average of 0 for Trinity Lewisia, much higher than Lewisia cloggii, and the percent of glands as well, it's averaging 0 in the Trinity Lewisia, and almost 100% in Lewisia cloggii. And so when we look at sepal variables, it's the same thing. You'll see that teeth quite a bit different, and then the percent glandular, 0% versus 100% average. And we look at stamen numbers. The Trinity Lewisia is a bit higher versus the 2 Lewisia cloggii, and anther length on average is shorter than the 2 Lewisia cloggii. And then style length. Trinity Lewisia is shorter than the 2 Lewisia cloggii. So Matt plotted all the quantitative morphological data, and looking at his principal components analysis, you can see the Trinity Lewisia is here in black, and it clusters nicely compared to the 2 Lewisia cloggii. And we see that again in this graph too. Here's the Trinity Lewisia versus the 2 Lewisia cloggii. So in 2022, Matt was able to obtain our samples from NIFGEL and included them in a phylogenetic tree he's been working on. And when we look at just the samples that we collected from the 22 locations, you can see that the Trinity Lewisia samples come out with strong support on their own branch compared to the Lewisia cloggii. So 100% bootstrap volume, which is good. And then when we compare, when he put that into other samples of Lewisia, You can see right here is the Trinity Lewisia, and it's also out on its own branch. And interestingly, Sacagawea is closely related to it, and then Lewisia cloggii is up here. So with the combined genetic and morphological evidence, we're in the process of describing this new Lewisia and have a manuscript in the works. I know this is a little unconventional, but we're thinking of naming it Lewisia taylori and the common name Trinity Lewisia. My coworker Stephanie Puentes and myself have decided to name it after the late Dr. Dean Taylor. If any of you knew Dean, you know how infectious his enthusiasm could be for plants. And so if it wasn't for his enthusiasm and encouragement, we probably would not have studied this Lewisia. Okay, so I'll go into just this plant. So the current range for this Lewisia is still around Trinity Lake. You can see it's mostly on the northeast side of the lake. Here's Trinity Center for those of you who know the area. It comes a little bit down to the south and then comes on that east side down towards Trinity Mountain. It occurs exclusively on Bragdon Shale Formation soil, and you can see some of the color differences in this soil formation, but it's always this shaly, rocky soil. And this soil formation, I didn't include a map of it, but it goes up to the northeast over into the Sacramento Canyon, but currently this plant's only known from the southern part in Trinity Lake. And just like Lewisia cloggii, it grows on shaly to gravelly open ridgelines and slopes. And this is looking back at the slopes we were just at. And so you can see all the potential habitat coming down. It also occurs in somewhat rockier locations versus, the open ridgelines. And then occasionally you'll get just small little openings in the forest or brush. We've also observed it in areas of past disturbance, such as old fuel breaks, roadside edges, old conifer plantations, old skid trails, and water bars. But it's always on that Bragdon Shale Formation soil. So to recap the unique features of this plant, it's known only from the southeastern Klamath Ranges on Bragdon Shale Formation soil. The bracts and sepals are predominantly entire and glandless. Stamen number is a lot higher than Lewisia cloggii, and then the style lengths and the anther lengths are a lot shorter than Lewisia cloggii. So with that, I'd like to thank there have been many people over the years who have helped us with this project and offered advice and gotten us connected with other people who have been able to help us. So I just want to give a shout out to all those people and open up if there's any questions. Thank you. You have one, Julie? Oh, are you there?
I'm curious if your collaborator, Matt, has plans to include Lewisia cotyledon into his phylogeny.
Matt would have to answer that. I'm not sure.
What happened, Jessica, with the Six Rivers plant?
So Matt can probably touch on that, but some different stuff was going on with that, so we decided not to tackle that and just focus on this new plant with this paper. So I guess there's still more work to be done on that one. Oh, Jane.
Did you find anything in the vegetation community surrounding it that's cool? Any other cool plants out there?
So it also occurred with like Arnica venosa and Allium siscuens as well. But seems like a Silene salmonaceae was a real common one that it occurred with. Great. Thank you.